Hey, how's it going? This is going to be a quick demo video for two sabers. This guy who these sabers belongs to wishes to remain anonymous. So we're just going to jump right into the actual functionality of both sabers. So the first one is the Ventress. We've got a Ventress and we've got a Katarn. Very different beasts, so we'll just go over them one at a time. So on the Ventress, 2-button setup, XFX install. So your front button here is going to be your activation, and then your back button here is going to be your auxiliary. If I can find it, you can hardly see it. So the screw that was in here, the grub screw that was in here for a chassis retention, was actually hidden by this clamp, and it was in a weird spot because in order to get to it, I had to move the clamp, which means the switch box had to be moved. But in order to have my switches here, you know, they needed to be in the right place. So I couldn't use that grub screw. What I ended up doing is I went inside one of these black holes right here. I drilled and tapped an 8/32 set screw for a chassis retention. It's sitting right here. It's a black grub screw, so from far away, hopefully you can't even see it, right? But when you get up in there, you can see it right there. The chassis is so tight in this guy to hold a CFX board that I ended up not even using it. The chassis was extremely tight to get put into place here because I wire it here and then slide it forward. It is just in there, right? So to get to everything, we're gonna unscrew the handle. Got a few threads on this guy. Comes right off here. And then here we've got your chassis. So I do put solo sabers on here in Arabesh. You've got a 20mm bass speaker or a 20mm speaker, which is what fits on the end cap of this guy. And I needed to use that in order to have the removable battery that you requested. So as you can tell, you know, from thread right here to right here where the battery stops and that diameter change happens for the speaker. I mean, that's all battery right there. So, I mean, it was just enough to get the a removable battery in there. And then if you look in here, you've got your SD card right there. So you can almost see it flat right there. I mean, you can see it right here. So when you look in here and boom, you can take it in and out with your finger right here. I made sure that you had easy SD card access. And then this chassis is just locked in place basically. So we're gonna throw a battery in it. Spring side is gonna be your negative. And then we're gonna throw the handle on. Threads work nice and they go off and on very easily. But this guy actually takes a 7/8 inch blade. So I've got my 7/8 inch test blade. You do have a blade retention screw right here, which we'll use. Blade socket in this one's kind of refreshing to the most of them that I work on because most of them are really tight. This one will take a blade in and out very easily. So mine is almost loose because I've sanded it so much. If you have a brand new blade, I'm sure it's just going to fit in there nice and fine, right? So we'll wake the board up. Activation. Sounds really good for a speaker that small, and I did turn the volume down to 90. Flash on flash. Tap for blast or deflex on the back here. Hold it for blade lockup. Now you notice these vents right here, you can see that light, right? And if I hold it for blade lockup, you basically got two areas where it shines through. You've got this area, and then 180 degrees from it, you've got that area as well. So that's a single pixel lighting that up. And so since you're very familiar with CFX, I'm not going to go through the full functionality other than to tell you, you know, I did, for blade color, it is auxiliary and twist your wrist. And then you can twist the hilt like this. This is how I like to set up all my hilts. I just like it this way. And of course that pixel is going to mimic your blade because I did, you can see it right here, right? I wired that pixel right in line with your Shtok pixel right here. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and take this blade off real quick so that I can show you your Shtok LEDs in there and how they light up fine. So that's the Ventress. I'm gonna go ahead and take the battery out because I've only got just a single test battery. Getting the battery out does take a little bit of doing, but you just reach your fingernail in there, you should be able to pop it out okay. And super solid on this guy. So we're gonna put this off to the side. And let's talk about this Katarn. Oh my God. So like these greeblies right here is like a Chinese finger trap trying to get these things on, because like you can't just put the bolts in. You can't just put the screws in to hold them on from the inside. Like you got to put them on before you slide this on. Otherwise there's no room to tighten them down. And then, I mean, it's like, took me like 35 minutes to get these on, but they're all good. They're on there. Everything's solid. This button setup is the same. So you've got a 2-button setup here. This guy is going to be your activation. And then this guy back here is going to be your auxiliary. This hilt came with 2 sets of these rods. You've got this brass set here that I chose to use, and then it also has a set of aluminum rods. But because I chose to use the brass ones and they have another set, I did not adhese these in with anything permanent. When this piece is off right here, you slide the brass rods down even to about the bottom of this guy. So I did all that. They were pretty tight. I just took my finger with a little bit of E6000 and I rubbed just around the area of the very top of these rods. So if you ever needed to get them out for anything, you could. But if not, they're solid in there. They're not wiggling around. That was my way of making it to where you could change these out in the future if you ever wanted to. So you do have Shtok NPXLs in here. This NPXL is actually held in by this set screw, and this top one's going to be your blade retention. So let's take this off. One thing about taking this off is it's 3 different pieces right here. So you've got this piece, you've got this coupler piece that unscrews from both halves, and then you got your handle. So when you're unscrewing this guy, you want to make sure you're not holding it up here and cranking on it, because this coupler will come loose too. I like to hold the coupler just like that, or around these black rubber pieces right here, these grommets, and just make sure that I'm untwisting it from the coupler and not the upper half. So we're going to take this off real quick. And then again, here's your chassis. So this guy was a bit of a cram food job. It's not very thick in diameter. I forget what it is offhand, but it's almost, if you look at the chassis, or if you look at the battery cradle, it's almost the size of the battery. And I modeled this battery cradle at a 0.74 inches diameter to hold that battery. But so I did drop the negative side way down so that it would be flat and you would have easy access to your SD card right there. So that's out right there, and everything's good. You can get in and out with your finger real easy, just like that. Now to get this chassis out, you had a hole here. It was smaller than an 8/32, but I wanted to use an 8/32 so that I could get a nice bite and hold the chassis in and not have to worry about anything stripping. So I did re-drill and tap that hole, and you have to crank down pretty tight on that guy to hold this chassis. If you don't crank down tight on that grub screw and you're putting this in, once it gets about halfway in, it does get a little bit tight. So if that grub screw is not tight enough and you're cranking this on, this chassis will begin to rotate, and that's a bad deal for switch alignment. So, so as you know, you sent me 2 chassis with this guy that came with a Saber, but neither one of them worked. But I grabbed the switch PCB off of one of them and I incorporated it into my chassis because I liked the way it was set up. It had the 3 pads where I could go switch 1, switch 2, and common negative. I liked that, so I just took that and incorporated it into my chassis. They line up perfectly, everything's good to go. And then you have the same size speaker here that you have in your Ventress. So we're going to throw a battery in here. Same thing, spring side your negative. We're going to throw this handle on. And like I said, it does get tight on you. The more you do it, the looser it will become. I've noticed that over my testing it the last 30 minutes before I decided to sit down and make this video. And then when we get to about right here, you see this is not quite lined up. So that's when you can give it a little bit of a crank, and line that guy up. So we woke the board up. Now we'll go activation. You see your stocks are working good. We're going to turn this off and get to a sound font that's got smooth swing.
Sound bank selection. I am Charlie.
So,
And I will see you dead for what you have done to my people.
it's funny every time. If you get a CFX install from me, you get my Britney Spears font. So each one of these Sabers has the Britney Spears font on it, but you can play with that at home. This Saber takes a 1-inch blade. So we're gonna throw a 1-inch blade in. Tighten that guy up a little bit. Activation. There's a smooth swing, right? Flash on flash. Tap for blaster deflect. Hold it for blade lockup. Turn it off. So everything's working good on this guy. This was, even though it was a bit of a pain, it was something unique that I haven't done before, so I really enjoyed working on it. I actually enjoyed working on both of these. I haven't seen these Sabers before, and probably won't see them again. I've had 2 people ask me already where you got them. But anyway, those are your Sabers. Hope they came out the way you liked. Thanks for letting me do them. I'll get them out in the mail to you tomorrow.